September 1939. Europe did not fall into war overnight. It collapsed screaming. German tanks tore through Polish borders with mechanical precision. Cities burned. Village vanished. Radios fell silent. And within weeks, Poland ceased to exist as a free nation. Among the defeated stood a man the world had never heard of. His name was Witold Pilecki. He was not a general. He was not a politician. He had no army behind him. But he had something far more dangerous. A plan. While others fled or hid, Pilecki stayed. Warsaw was under Nazi occupation, streets crawling with soldiers, posters announcing executions nailed to walls. Every day, people disappeared. Entire families vanished without explanation. And then the rumors began. Whispers passed from mouth to mouth, always quietly, always with fear. A camp, somewhere in southern Poland. A place called Auschwitz. No letters came back. No prisoners returned. Only silence. The Nazis claimed it was a labor camp. But labor camps do not erase thousands of people. The Polish underground needed answers. Proof. Evidence. And that was when Pilecki said something that silenced the room. I will go inside. The resistance thought he had lost his mind. You don't enter a death camp. You escape one, if you're lucky. But Pilecki understood something terrifying. No one outside Auschwitz could truly explain what was happening inside. So he made a decision no one else dared to imagine. He would voluntarily become a prisoner, not to survive, but to report the truth. In September 1940, German forces conducted a massive street roundup in Warsaw. Random arrests. No questions. No mercy. Pilecki walked straight into it. He carried forged documents. A fake name. No weapon. No protection. As soldiers surrounded him, he did not resist. Within hours, he was beaten, searched, and shoved into a cattle car packed with terrified men. The doors slammed shut. Darkness swallowed them. Men cried. Others prayed. Some screamed for water. Pilecki stayed silent. He knew something they did not. This was not a transport to work. It was a one-way journey into the unknown. After days without food, without air, the train finally stopped. The doors burst open. Shouting. Screaming. Dogs barking. Prisoners were dragged out and forced to run. Anyone who stumbled was beaten. Anyone who looked up was struck. And then they saw it. Iron gates. Ww2. A sign hanging above the entrance, mocking every man beneath it. Arbeit macht frei. Work makes you free. Pilecki crossed the gate. At that exact moment, the world he knew ended. His name was taken. His identity erased. He was no longer Witold Pilecki. He became prisoner 4859. And he had just entered the most efficient killing machine the world had ever created. What he would witness next would be so horrific that even the Allies would later refuse to believe him. And the true nightmare had only just begun. Next part reveals what Auschwitz did to a human being in the first 24 hours and why most prisoners didn't survive even when the train screeched to a halt. The doors did not open immediately. For a long moment, there was only silence, broken by coughing, quiet sobs, and the sound of men breathing too fast in the darkness. Then the doors slammed open. Cold air rushed in. So did terror. German guards screamed orders in a language many prisoners did not understand. Rifle butts slammed into backs. Men were dragged out of the cattle cars and beaten before their feet touched the ground. Witold Pilecki jumped down with the others. This was Auschwitz. Above the iron gate, illuminated by weak morning light, hung the words, Arbeit macht frei. Work makes you free. Pilecki understood instantly. It was a lie designed to break the soul. K. The first hour. Prisoners were forced to run. Those who stumbled were beaten. Those who fell were dragged away. Some never stood again. Pilecki kept his eyes down and his mouth shut. He moved when ordered. He learned quickly that curiosity was fatal. They were lined up, shaved, stripped naked, humiliated. Every personal item, rings, watches, photographs, was taken. Identity itself was confiscated. Then came the numbers. A German officer shouted names that were not names at all. When Pilecki's turn came, he received a number that would replace his existence. 4,859. No ceremony. No explanation, just pain. That number was sewn onto his uniform. From that moment on, Witold Pilecki officially ceased to exist. The system of death. Auschwitz was not chaos. It was order. Cruel, calculated, industrial order. Prisoners were divided into work details designed not to sustain life, but to destroy it slowly. Food was starvation disguised as a meal. A thin soup of rotten vegetables. A chunk of bread that never satisfied hunger. Men collapsed during roll call that could last hours in freezing cold or burning heat. If someone collapsed, the entire block was punished. Beatings were not emotional. They were procedural. Pilecki watched men die for being too weak to stand. And he understood something terrifying. This place was designed to erase hope first, then the body. Surviving without being seen. Pilecki adapted. He moved carefully. He learned who watched, who listened, and who talked too much. The camp was filled with informers, prisoners forced to betray others to survive one more day. Pilecki spoke little, observed everything. He memorized faces, guard routines, work schedules, death counts. At night, packed into wooden barracks with hundreds of men, he listened. Whispers traveled faster than food. Talk of executions, talk of beatings, talk of transports that never returned. And slowly, quietly, Pilecki began searching for something far more dangerous than food. Trust. The first connection. Weeks passed. Death became normal. And then, one night, a man whispered a name. A former Polish officer. Another whispered back. A teacher. Then a doctor. Men who still remembered who they were. Men who still believed Poland existed. Pilecki revealed nothing at first. Trust was earned in Auschwitz, or paid for with blood. But when he finally spoke, it was with certainty. I'm here on purpose. They stared at him. No one entered Auschwitz on purpose. Except him. The resistance is born. It began with 3 men, then 5, then 10. They shared food, warned each other of selections, stole moments of rest, and slowly, something unthinkable formed inside the death camp. An underground resistance. Pilecki organized it like a military unit. Cells. Compartmentalization. No one knew more than necessary. If one man was caught, the rest might live. If one message escaped, the world might listen. But the danger was constant. Every whisper could be overheard. Every meeting could be the last. Every day could end at the gallows. The first report. Pilecki began writing reports in his head. He could not write them down. Paper was forbidden. So he memorized numbers of dead, methods of execution, medical experiments, starvation levels. He committed horror to memory because memory could not be confiscated. The plan was simple. Get the information out. The execution would be anything but the cost of failure. One morning, a prisoner from another block was caught hiding bread. The entire block was assembled. The man was beaten until he no longer moved. Then beaten again. Pilecki stood in line, motionless, eyes forward, heart pounding. He realized something chilling. One mistake would not only kill him, it would kill the truth with him. Auschwitz did not just murder people. It murdered witnesses. And Pilecki had made himself one. That night, a guard stopped in front of Pilecki, looked at his number, looked into his eyes, and smiled. Pilecki did not know why, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Someone was watching him. And in Auschwitz, being noticed was often a death sentence. Auschwitz was designed to erase people. Names vanished first, then faces, then hope. For Witold Pilecki, now prisoner 4859, every single day began with the same question. Will I survive until tonight? Roll call lasted for hours. Prisoners stood motionless in freezing cold or burning sun. If one man collapsed, everyone paid the price. Beatings followed, sometimes executions, sometimes worse, slow punishment meant to terrify those still alive. Pilecki learned quickly, visibility meant death. To survive, he had to become invisible. But invisibility was only the surface of his plan, the birth of a secret mission. Within weeks, Pilecki noticed something unusual. Not all prisoners were broken. Some still whispered. Some still watched guards carefully. Some still remembered who they were. Doctors, teachers, former soldiers. Men who understood one truth. If no one escapes with proof, Auschwitz will continue forever. Pilecki began carefully testing people, never revealing too much, never too fast. One wrong word could lead to a public hanging. At night, inside the overcrowded barracks, he spoke in fragments. Do you still believe Poland exists? Do you remember military signals? If the world knew, would it act? Most men stayed silent. Silence was safer, but a few nodded. That was enough. The underground is born. Pilecki helped form a secret resistance cell inside Auschwitz, later known as ZOW, Union of Military Organization. Its goals were terrifyingly simple. Document everything. Help prisoners survive. Prepare for a future uprising. Get the truth out. They had no weapons, no radios, no maps, only memory. Pilecki memorized execution numbers, selection patterns, names of SS officers, medical experiments, starvation methods. He became a walking archive of horror. Every detail mattered, because memory was the only weapon that couldn't be confiscated. By day, Pilecki was just another starving prisoner. By night, he was something else. Food was redistributed secretly. Warnings were passed before selections. The sick were hidden when possible. Hope was shared in whispers, but danger was everywhere. Prisoner informants, capos, worked for the SS. One accusation meant torture. Two meant execution. Pilecki knew he wasn't just risking his life. He was risking everyone's. The first messages leave Auschwitz. In late 1940, something extraordinary happened. A prisoner released from Auschwitz carried something invisible with him. Information. Through coded messages and trusted couriers, Pilecki's reports reached the Polish resistance in Warsaw. They described mass starvation, beatings as policy, systematic murder, the early stages of industrialized death. These were some of the first eyewitness reports from inside Auschwitz. And yet, the world hesitated. The reports sounded too horrific to be true, a truth too terrible to believe. Pilecki didn't know this yet. Inside the camp, conditions worsened. New transports arrived daily. Executions increased. Punishments became more public. The camp was evolving. What began as imprisonment was turning into something far more final. Pilecki realized a terrifying truth. Time was running out. If the world didn't act soon, Auschwitz would become a factory of death beyond imagination. And the next phase had already begun. Pilecki had entered Auschwitz to report the truth. But now he faced an impossible question. Should he stay longer to gather more proof? Or escape before the truth dies with him? Because what the Nazis were planning next would change Auschwitz forever. Auschwitz was not a prison. It was a machine. By 1941, Witold Pilecki fully understood this truth. The camp was engineered not just to kill bodies, but to erase identity, hope, and memory. Every detail served that purpose, from the roll calls that lasted for hours to the starvation rations carefully calculated to keep men alive just long enough to suffer. Every morning before dawn, prisoners were dragged from the barracks. Sick or healthy, alive or half dead, it did not matter. They stood in formation while guards counted and recounted them, sometimes for hours in freezing rain or snow. Men collapsed. Those who fell were beaten. Those who did not rise again were dragged away like broken tools. Pilecki stood among them, his body thinning, his bones pressing against his skin. Hunger was no longer pain. It was a permanent condition. The camp soup was little more than dirty water. Bread rations grew smaller. Men fought over crumbs, over potato peels pulled from garbage pits. Yet even here, the human spirit did not die quietly. Pilecki watched carefully. He observed which guards were cruel, which were lazy, which could be bribed. He memorized schedules, punishment patterns, and execution methods. Auschwitz changed constantly, expanding, evolving, becoming more efficient at death. And then, something new began. Trains arrived more frequently. Not with prisoners meant for labor, but with families. Men, women, children. They arrived believing lies. That they were being relocated. That they would work. That families would stay together. Pilecki saw their faces as they stepped onto the platform. confused, frightened, still human. Within hours, most of them were gone. Smoke rose day and night. The camp was no longer hiding its purpose. Pilecki realized the truth with horrifying clarity. Auschwitz was becoming an extermination center, and the world had no idea. Despite exhaustion and constant danger, Pilecki's underground network grew. He divided it into cells so no one knew too much. If one man broke under torture, the rest could survive. Doctors smuggled medicine. Clerks altered records to delay executions. Labor squads shared food with the weakest prisoners. Information flowed quietly. Numbers of the dead, descriptions of gas chambers, details of medical experiments. Every report Pilecki sent out grew darker. And still, no help came. The Allies were fighting a global war. Intelligence from a death camp sounded unbelievable. Impossible. Exaggerated. Pilecki knew that if words were not enough, proof would be needed. But proof came at a terrible cost. Selections. One afternoon, a rumor spread through the barracks like electricity. A selection was coming. SS doctors walked through prisoner lines, pointing left or right with a gloved finger. Those deemed too weak were removed. No explanations. No appeals. Pilecki watched men he had worked with, men who had shared bread with him, disappear forever. He knew one mistake, one cough, one moment of weakness could end his mission instantly. So he forced himself to stand straight, to look strong, to survive. That night, the barracks were quieter than usual. Too many were gone. The air was thick with fear and guilt. Fear of death, guilt of survival. Pilecki lay awake, listening to distant screams, and asked himself the question that haunted him daily. How long can a man survive hell without becoming part of it? The decision no one wanted him to make. By late 1942, Pilecki had spent more than 2 years inside Auschwitz. 2 years of starvation. 2 years of death. 2 years of secrets. He had done what he came to do. The world had been warned. Again and again. And yet, Auschwitz continued. That was when Pilecki made another impossible decision. If the Allies would not act on reports smuggled out of the camp, then he would have to escape and tell them himself. But escaping Auschwitz was nearly impossible. Watchtowers, patrols, informers, dogs, electric fences. Anyone caught attempting escape was tortured publicly. Their entire block was punished, sometimes executed. Escape did not just risk his life. It risked hundreds of others. Pilecki hesitated, not because he feared death, but because he feared failure. And then, the camp changed again. More transports, more smoke, more children. Pilecki knew time had run out. He began planning an escape from the most heavily guarded death camp on Earth. A plan so dangerous that even his own resistance network begged him not to try. If he failed, Auschwitz would kill him slowly. If he succeeded, the truth would finally walk free. But Auschwitz never lets go easily. By late 1942, Auschwitz no longer felt like a single camp. It felt like a machine expanding, refining itself, learning how to kill faster. New barracks appeared. New transports arrived. And with them came a truth so horrifying that even hardened prisoners struggled to accept it. Pilecki now understood the full scale of what Auschwitz had become. This was no longer just a prison camp. It was an industrial center of death. From whispered conversations with Sonderkommando workers and terrified newcomers, Pilecki pieced together the unthinkable. Gas chambers, mass executions, entire transports disappearing within hours of arrival. The smoke that never stopped was not coincidence. It was evidence. Every report he had sent so far was already shocking. But this new truth demanded more than messages smuggled in laundry. It demanded action. Inside the resistance network, arguments broke out in hushed tones. Some believed the Allies would eventually bomb the camp. Others believed an internal uprising could save thousands. But most knew the reality. Prisoners were weak, starved, unarmed. An uprising would likely end in slaughter. Pilecki proposed something far more dangerous. He suggested that the resistance prepare for a coordinated revolt, but only if the Allies promised support from the outside. The idea spread quietly through the barracks like electricity. Hope, dangerous and fragile, flickered in men who had forgotten how it felt. If the Allies attacked from the air, if weapons could somehow be smuggled in, if timing was perfect, maybe Auschwitz could be broken. But hope was a liability in Auschwitz. The SS increased inspections. Informants multiplied. One careless word could condemn dozens. Pilecki began sleeping less. Every day brought another risk, another calculation, another choice between silence and survival. Then came the moment that nearly destroyed everything. During roll call, a prisoner collapsed beside Pilecki. A guard stormed forward, screaming. The man was accused of sabotage, faking illness to avoid work. As punishment, the SS demanded names. Someone had helped him. Someone always did. Silence followed. Seconds stretched into eternity. Pilecki knew this moment well. He had seen what happened next.